Everybody, welcome to the conference. I hope you're having a good time, and I hope you will have a very interesting time. It's a great pleasure today to introduce Jonathan, who is a colleague at King's College London. He's a fellow of the International Centre for the Study of Radicalisation at my college, which, as I hope you know, has become a leading centre for the study of these issues. As you've heard, Jonathan specialises in South Asia, in terrorism, radicalization, transatlantic relations, and international security in general. I don't know whether he'll be talking about this at all today, because it's not strictly speaking the subject of his talk, but I think it's of great importance that Jonathan is also an expert in the democratic transition in Indonesia, because of course in several parts of Asia, including Pakistan, which is my main area of study at the moment, we are looking at questions of the consolidation of democracy in various places and the question of whether it can consolidate itself, and in that context of whether democracy will be able to prevail over the various radical groups that are threatening it. I think that what we also see from the headlines at the moment is that the old idea of a linear path, the word path was used again and again when I was a Western journalist working in the former Soviet Union, the path to democracy and the free market, it has to be seriously questioned, and one always has to maintain a certain distance from that. Because what we're seeing at the moment is that even democracies which appeared to be very successful, and which indeed are very successful in many ways, like Turkey and Brazil, can still suffer very serious checks, that nothing is decided for good. There is always the room, alas, for serious problems. What Jonathan will be talking about today is, in the broader sense, an issue of central importance to the world at the moment. Whichever aspect you look at, whether it's issues of terrorism and security, which we're discussing at this conference, whether it's issues of economic development, whether it's issues of ecology, of course social and cultural change, migration. As much, it must be said, in London as in any other city around the world. And within that, Jonathan will be looking specifically at cyber security. We're all aware, I'm sure, of these new ideas of wired informational cities. But within that, there is the critical question of how this infrastructure can be secured against the enemies of order. So, with that, Jonathan, thank you so much. I look forward to hearing your talk.
Thank you very much, Anatol. That was a brilliant introduction. Even though the bio that he was referring to is 5 years old, it's a completely new bio, but I liked it, and I appreciate the introduction. Anatol and Maruf are part of the segue now into what I think we've heard, some meat for this conference. I'm not sure how you will respond to this, but I will give you, in the next 15 minutes or so, a lot of PowerPoint slides, a lot of information. You don't have to read every word on each slide. Just sort of absorb it and pick what you wish to learn. And let's just begin. The topic is securing cities in the coming cyber tsunami, how governments and entrepreneurs can navigate the coming challenges and opportunities. The Chertoff Group, which I now am a senior advisor, is a global advisory firm and investment bank exclusively focused on security. The founder is Michael Chertoff, who was the head of Department of Homeland Security. John Reed here in London, former Minister of Defense and of what is the equivalent, the Home Secretary. Michael Hayden, former head of the CIA. What's happening? Well, let me start with my own sort of constellation of trends, which is the urbanization that's going on in the world, and particularly in India. Now, both China and India will see 250 million people moving from countryside to the cities. In some cases, it's not really a move. It's just that you become agglomerated into a larger entity that is a city rather than a village. 590 million Indians will live in cities by 2030, almost twice the U.S. population today. India will surpass China and become the most populous country in the world sometime in the next 10 years or so, certainly before 2030. India's urbanization means 6 mega cities of over 10 million persons by 2030 and 13 cities with more than 4 million. 3 of the biggest cities in the world by 2030 will be Indian. Mumbai and Delhi will be in the top 5. But focus also on the medium-sized cities of between 500,000 and 2 million. They will grow most in the future. India alone will have 68 of these cities compared to only 42 today. Europe, by contrast, has 35 such cities. 80% of the world's GDP is generated in urban areas. Urbanization poses an important governance challenge. And not only a governance challenge, as Deb Doot was telling me before, it has huge implications on tensions between tribal society and between village society that's been going on for thousands of years. And urbanization poses huge changes and potential conflict. In order to accommodate a growing number of urban dwellers, city management methods and skills must improve, and infrastructure investment must accelerate. If done right, India's largest cities could generate as much as 80% of the funding they require from internal sources. Some of the themes that Maruf had asked me to address is preventing the next Mumbai. What will be the next Mumbai? Will it necessarily be like the last Mumbai attack? How will India prevent the next Mumbai? What are the U.S. best practices? And here's precisely why I'm going into cybersecurity. What are the U.S. best practices for securing large urban environments that can be applied to India's emerging megacities? Comprehensive mega-urban security means assessing threat and vulnerability, developing and implementing a strategy, planning for business continuity and resiliency in the face of an attack, end-to-end IT security that includes design, governance, operations, architecture, technology, and gaming exercises. You're going to see in a short while a little bit of a gaming exercise. What I think the United States best practices will provide is a glimpse into the breadth of the U.S. government effort in cybersecurity, and it is quite broad. You'll gain a familiarity with some of the alphabet soup of U.S. agencies. It will offer a model for other governments and private sectors as they consider the best way to ramp up their cybersecurity. And finally, it talks about the concept of CIKR, critical infrastructure and key resources, which are indispensable to securing cities. I repeat, critical infrastructure and key resources. Well, the threat environment is quite variegated. As you can see on the left-hand column, the various types of threats, IEDs, nuclear attack, biological, radiological, chemical, natural disasters, cyber, pandemics. Now, this is the little video.
This program is a simulated
Forgive me for the loud noise, but it's quite short. Maybe three minutes.
We want to welcome you to We Were Warned, Cyber Shockwave. I'm Wolf Blitzer. What you're about to see is not real, but the threat is very real indeed. You're about to get an unprecedented look at how the U.S. government would deal with a massive cyber shockwave.
Welcome back to GNN's coverage of a developing story that is affecting millions of Americans. 2.5 months ago, a gaping security vulnerability in the operating systems of this nation's smartphones was exploited by the now infamous March Madness application.
Well, I want to thank each of you for attending this National Security Council meeting on short notice. As I know you're all well aware, this smartphone botnet attack that we're currently experiencing represents a serious problem that has the potential to become even more serious as time goes on. The President is scheduled to give a press conference in a little over an hour. First, the President wants to know how bad the situation is likely to get and what we are doing to get our telecommunications system back to normal as quickly as possible. Second, the President wants to know who did this and why they did it, and what his options are for a response, both in the short term and in the long term, and how we can prevent this from happening again. And finally, the President needs to know what he can say in the press conference to calm the public and reassure them that we are taking vigorous action to deal with this problem as it unfolds. Does the President have the authority under statute or inherently to say for a short period of time to a power company, here's the deal, you're not going to divert power from NSA, these are your first priority customers, and you have no choice?
He has no statutory authority in almost any of these areas. He cannot direct a private sector enterprise to do X or Y, except in very rare circumstances, and I'm unaware of any authority that would fix, for example, the NSA's
does Article 2 give him
problem.
that?
So, he's the commander-in-chief. Article 2 says that is his job, and I believe that he has to assert that authority, and where necessary for our national security, make those.
The electrical system in this country is not capable of being nationalized and operated as one system. It is over 3,000 systems out there, each of which has its own generation and distribution, etc. You can have some general rules of the road. You can say you must serve the Department of Defense first, you must serve other loads first, but you cannot operate it from one central control system in the White House. It just can't be done.
Well, after that video, what's coming? Well, we have a number of things in the United States that are coming right now. One is that we're plagued by uncertainty. We just don't know how quite to navigate this future. We have uniquely in America something called sequestration, budget and debt ceilings that continue to be causing political fights within Congress. We have the Department of Defense implementing cost-cutting measures ahead of Congress's moves. And we have cyber sticking out as one of the few opportunities out there. The Cyber Command is going to increase its workforce by 5 times. There was a presidential executive order on cyber that was issued on February 12th, 2012. The key highlights was it makes cyber an official White House priority, which is likely to energize federal agencies to accelerate cyber initiatives. It contains voluntary standards for companies looking to participate, and those companies will need help. And then at the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, it establishes procedures to expand the Enhanced Cybersecurity Services Initiative, which will broaden the inclusion of the range of cybersecurity solution providers. This is just the breadth of the U.S. national security layout. All these are different agencies, some of them quite new, and all of them addressing in one way or other the homeland security threat. Now, note the difference here between who dominates the different types of threats. In the nuclear threat, it's a U.S. government-dominated enterprise, if you will. In the cyber area, it's largely private sector. The industry, private sector, is better equipped to lead the U.S. cybersecurity, and it's largely a self-regulating entity. The government is systematically unable to meet the threat except where there's state actor warfare or sophisticated terrorist scenarios, such as what we were seeing in the video. What are the opportunities outside the beltway, as they say? Well, there are new agencies that are getting in the game. Private sector companies looking to wade through the regulatory regimes, such as the executive order I mentioned, need advice. The private sector still cares about cyber and feels impacted. It's still being attacked daily. Many companies want to better protect their own networks, and what can be done without depending on Washington or Congress. Again, the critical infrastructure operators will respond to this executive order and seek help. Information sharing will continue, but we will still need the ability to analyze lots of data better New opportunities also are arising outside the U.S. UK, Canada, the Middle East, and of course India are hugely increasing their cyber budgets. So you have a paradigm shift. In 2013, you see the U.S. government is the main core of the effort to support critical infrastructure protection, and then you have the international community sort of following. But by 2020, it'll be inverted. Critical infrastructure protection will be the main base, and then the international sphere will be the second largest part, and then the U.S. government will be relatively smaller in its role. So the key takeaway is that cyber solution providers must prepare to compete in this critical infrastructure and key resources area, and the international markets for core cyber opportunities are expanding. So if you want to strategically position yourself for maximum long-term growth, look at these triangles closely. This is just the kind of the chart of the federal cybersecurity at the agency level. The main two areas are the Department of Defense and the Department of Homeland Security. Okay, so we're near the end. What are the takeaways for this cyber tsunami? How can we navigate this? It obviously poses huge challenges, but also huge opportunities. Remember the cyber paradigm shift. The private sector is better positioned in many ways to lead the cyber fight than government. And this not only applies to the U.S., which is an illustration of best practices, but I think it will apply to India and other countries, that the private sector is better equipped than the government. If you're in the commercial sector today, consider diversification into government to take advantage of a lot of these government contracts. If you're in government today, make sure you position yourself for the real cyber golden goose, which is, don't forget CIP, Critical Infrastructure Protection. And finally, all that glitters is not gold. Make sure you follow the money and not the cyber hype. Thank you very much.